Man, I just told them that it takes a lot of character and integrity to do what they're doing. I've been in the league for a while, and I've seen teams give in to circumstances that are less than what we're dealing with, and that was admirable. Obviously, we had a tough third quarter, and the ability to fight back from that and have an even fourth was tremendous. I hurt for them. We feel like we're just getting so close to not just winning one game, but winning a lot of games if we play that way.
Yeah, we're not 2-26 bad. You know what I mean? Like, no way are we that bad.
Welcome, Pistons Nation. Welcome, Toronto Raptors Nation, to a very special live. And this one is going to be devoted to the team that everyone in the league is talking about right now. Must-watch TV. The Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons. The hapless Detroit Pistons. The 2-win Detroit Pistons. The worst team in NBA history, the Detroit Pistons. That's certainly the take. Everyone's saying they're the worst team in the NBA. They're the worst team in the league. They're the worst team in NBA history. They're an embarrassment. I am here to deliver you some good news, Detroit Pistons fans. You are not even close to the worst team in NBA history, and nothing that you do this season is going to convince me otherwise. You're not even the worst team in the NBA right now. Now, I'm no stranger to controversial takes. I think for myself. I've always thought for myself. Pensare basketball. Pensare translates in Italian to think. I am not someone who waits for Stephen A. Smith and Bontemps and other people to tell me what to think. I watched the Pistons. I watched a lot of the Pistons. I watched them last night. I watched them blow a 21-point lead to the Boston Celtics. I watched them play competitive basketball against the Nets. I watched them lose to a Utah Jazz team that they were favored to beat. I have made some waves in Detroit in the past. I had a video about Cade and Scotty. If you remember it, it was this. Yep. Detroit Pistons fans were not pleased with me that day. There's 667 comments on that video, and you can definitely go and read them. It's a lot of pissed off Pistons fans. But I'm not here to talk about Cade and Scotty. That take is retired. It's done with. Hopefully for now, we don't have to talk about that. Not even here to talk about Cade Cunningham. I'm here to talk about shit like this. This is embarrassing. No one who was raised right, no one in the world, shout out to Troy Dan, apparently, allegedly, I questioned, I didn't know who this guy was. He's apparently a YouTuber, a very famous YouTuber from Canada. He flew down. Look at this douchebag's face on the left. He's so upset that the Pistons might win one. Oh, a wasted flight. Who would wish this on any fan base? I certainly would not wish this as a Raptors fan. And you know what? I've got a confession. I loved the Detroit Pistons. My childhood was full of Pistons teams that I idolized. If you asked me what my second favorite team was in 1995, Pistons. You asked me what my second favorite team was in 2005, the Pistons. I'm a closet Pistons fan. Love Rasheed Wallace. Love Chauncey Billups. Love Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton, that entire team. The Pistons have been bad for a really long time, and everyone's got their take. I listened to 4 hours. 4 hours. I didn't say a word, but I listened to 4 hours of Pistons talk on X/Twitter yesterday. And I listened to people point the finger at Monty Williams, point the finger at Cade, point the finger at Killian Hayes, Asar Thompson, this player, that player. It's Troy Weaver. It's Tom Gores. It's Arn Tellem. Everyone's got a scapegoat. Everyone's got an idea. Everyone's got a take. Here's mine. This team is not that bad. They're just not that bad. There's a lot of reasons for it. I promise you I'll prove it. I'll prove it. I'll give you the numbers, then I'll give you my rationale for what's actually happening in Detroit, because it's not what you think. And you look at this roster, you look at this roster right here. Sorry, nope, sorry, wrong one. You look at this roster right here. Just look at the names on that list. Jalen Duren, Marcus Sasser, Cade Cunningham, Marvin Bagley, Killian Hayes, Bojan Bogdanovic, James Wiseman, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Alec Burks, Isaiah Stewart, Joe Harris, who's having a terrible year, by the way, Isaiah Livers, who might be the worst player in league history right now. That looks like the worst team in NBA history. Tell me you haven't watched NBA basketball without telling me you haven't watched NBA basketball if you think that's the worst team in NBA history. You must have missed the process, Sixers. Trust me, nothing that this team is going to do this season is making this team worse than the Michael Carter Williams-led Sixers. That team was abysmal. Trust me, I watched them. You should go back and watch some of those games. Oh, they were horrible. Okay, I feel like I owe it to you. Are the Pistons the worst team in the league? Really? They're the worst team in NBA history. This is the most efficient offensive season in NBA history so far. We're just coming off the most efficient month of NBA offense in history. And they're not even the worst rated offensive rating team. The worst, they're 27th in effective field goal percentage, 25th in defensive rating, 29th in net rating. I know I feel like I'm clowning it. I'm not suggesting this team is a playoff team. I'm not even suggesting they're a play-in team. I'm just telling you this take that they are the worst team ever because they lost 28 straight. There's a lot of things that are happening that are creating a 28 straight losing streak. I'll tell you one of the things that's happening. First of all, just take a look. Just take a look. This is the worst team in NBA history. Are you crazy? They are honestly not the worst team right now. They're just not. They're bad. They're so bad. But they're not the worst. And it's fixable. Hope is on the horizon. It is fixable. You will absolutely win another game this year. But there are some serious circumstances in play right now. Number one, there aren't a lot of bad teams in the league. That's the first one. There just aren't a lot of Detroits and Charlottes and Washingtons. They're not that bad. Look at the Washington Wizards. They're running out Tyus Jones, Denny Avdia, Bilal Coulibaly, Daniel Gafford, Kyle Kuzma, Jordan Poole. These are all NBA dudes. These are all NBA players. These are guys who play minutes in the NBA. And they're really bad. Shout outs to Kyle Kuzma for, trying to troll the Pistons yesterday when his team has 3 more wins than the Pistons. But seriously, there aren't a lot of really bad teams. There just aren't. Parity was the word coming into this season. If you were paying attention, you just looked around and you're like, holy shit. The Chicago Bulls have Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, Patrick Williams. These are all NBA guys. Alex Caruso, all NBA guys. Kobe White. This is not a team that's running out G League guys and replacement level players and guys who should be playing in China. These are real NBA dudes. These are former All-Stars. Zach LaVine's a former All-Star. Right? These are dudes. These are players. They would play on better teams. Nikola Vucevic would probably start on half the teams in the NBA. DeMar DeRozan would start on most teams. Zach LaVine would start on almost every team in the league. And that team was really bad. Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane was not enough to get you out of what were the Memphis Grizzlies at before Ja Morant came back? Those are all NBA guys too. Those are really good NBA guys. I would argue Desmond Bane is borderline all-star. Jaren Jackson was an all-star last year. That's not enough. The league has never been more talented. Being the worst team in the NBA today, which is, I think, an honor that I would say is dubiously held by the San Antonio Spurs right now, to be honest. I think they're the worst team in the league right now. But people will always say, no, they're not because they got Wemby. They've played like the worst team in the NBA because they're running a non-point guard at point guard. At least they were. Now they're starting Malachi Brenham. But It's self-inflicted, but even them, you look at them and you're like, Keldon Johnson, that's a player. That's a guy who would start on a lot of teams. Devin Vassell, he would start on a lot of teams. Wemby, I think teams would trade their entire roster for Wemby right now. Jeremy Sohan is definitely not a point guard, but he's a rotation guy on a lot of teams. Underhanded free throws and all, one-handed free throws and all. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of guys on that team. They're good. They're good players. Portland Trailblazers, they're really bad. Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson, Malcolm Brogdon, Jeremy Grant. I mean, DeAndre Ayton, he's there. Robert Williams, he's out, but he's there. How many players are on the Portland Trailblazers? They're really bad too, apparently. Shaden Sharp, I didn't even mention Shaden Sharp. Are the Portland Trailblazers good? Is there a world in which if I could take a time machine, if I could take the Portland Trailblazers of today with Malcolm Brogdon, Jeremy Grant, and Scoot Henderson, and Shaden Sharp, and all the talent, Anthony Simons, man, the talent on that team. If I could take that team and put them in like 2006 East, in the East in 2006, are they a playoff team? Probably. But they're the worst team in the West. For most people, that's like the second worst team in the West. The league is really good. There aren't a lot of teams that you can beat, that you're better than. Okay, so let's say there are 3 teams and maybe 4 teams if health is a concern. The Pistons haven't been that healthy, let's be honest. But there are teams out there that the Pistons maybe are better than. They were certainly better than the Utah Jazz when the Jazz came without Lauri Markkanen, without Taylor Horton-Tucker, right? Without Jordan Clarkson. Like, they should have beat that team. Did they play down to their competition? Is this ego? We'll get into that. We'll get into the locker room of the Pistons, the leadership, the coaching, all of that. There's a lot to discuss here. I don't want to ramble on too long, but I feel this needs to be said because I'm sick and tired of listening to everyone talk about this team incorrectly. Like, you're missing the fucking plot. You're missing the point. And I'm sick of it because, I like a lot of Pistons, creators. Commissioner Dynamo. That guy's awesome. Motown Noah. This guy's awesome. I like Pistons podcasters. And even now they're wrong. I'm watching their content and they're like, sell the team. Sell the team. Okay. That's going to solve it. Trade this guy, trade Jaden Ivey, trade Killian Hayes, bench Killian Hayes. That's going to solve your problems. That's not solving your problems. You're just looking for an outlet. We need to talk about the actual problem. Let's talk about problem number 2. Okay, so we talked about the fact that the league has never been more talented, and frankly, you're just not beating most teams. Here's the second problem. How do teams like Charlotte, or even the team like the expansion level Raptors, how did the expansion Raptors back in, I think, 96 beat the 96 Bulls with Michael Jordan? How did the expansion era Raptors, with God knows, they barely had NBA players on that team, how did they beat the greatest team of all time? The 96 Chicago Bulls. How did they beat that team? It's human nature. It's human nature to relax when you see a night like this. It's human nature to party a little bit more, sleep with a couple of girls the night before, get up a little bit late, go through your workouts a little bit, and just kind of come out with this lackadaisical effort, and boom, hot shooting night, cold shooting night, you lose. Now, most of the time, if you're honest, if you're a coach or you're a scout or you're a player or whatever, you would definitely agree with this. Most teams don't try every single night. They don't go balls out. They're not jumping for offensive rebounds and sprinting hard and cutting hard. There are very few games that most teams get up for. Basing a 2-win team is not a team most teams would get up for. But everyone's up to face the Pistons. This is the biggest problem facing Detroit right now, is that no one is sleeping on them. No one wants to lose to them. The Nets had a back-to-back. They wanted to rest on a back-to-back. Instead of resting their players against the worst team allegedly in history, they chose to rest their players against Milwaukee. Why? because they didn't want to lose. They didn't want to lose to the Pistons. The reason that everyone's talking about the Pistons being bad is because everyone knows deep down they're not this bad. Everyone knows they're not this bad. You're crazy if you think this team is the worst team in NBA history. You're crazy. You absolutely don't understand basketball. This is not. If I did a 7-game series between this Pistons team and the process era Sixers, it would be a sweep with 4 blowouts. It's not even close. It's not even close. You're crazy if you think it is. Now, there's a lot of roster construction issues on the Pistons. As I said, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about Cade's turnovers. We'll talk about Killian Hayes and his unearned role and, Monty Williams and, the hapless, totally directionless, strategies employed by Troy Weaver. There's a lot of issues and there's a lot of blame to go around. But scapegoating one guy and saying it's this guy's fault, it's that guy's fault, it's not. It's not. It's very widespread. This is a very nuanced discussion. We need to have nuanced answers for it. And if you don't, you're just being a casual and you're being wrong. And it's not helping. It's not helping anything to just go out and say they're the worst team in NBA history. This guy's a bum. That guy's a bum. This guy needs to get traded. That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help. It certainly doesn't come to a solution. It definitely isn't a critical debate. It's not, yesterday I was watching a Thinking Basketball podcast, 25 under 25. Very interesting, very disorganized, but whatever. I was happy to see Scotty Barnes go 6th. But then they got to the tail end, 23, 24, 25. And, when Cody picked Cade Cunningham, Ben was shocked. He's like, oh my God. And he's just like, Cade's not on your radar? He's like, he's not on my radar. No, he picked Emmanuel quickly. They picked Emmanuel quickly. They picked Keegan Murray. They picked a lot of players. And I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but like Cade's not that bad. He's not this good, but he's not that bad. What are you talking about here? Are you watching the same games I'm watching? What do we watch? What are we talking about? Cade Cunningham's not one of the top 25 players under 25. You must be insane. Like he's fringy at the bottom, but like to say he's not on your radar there, that's nuts. Okay? No disrespect to Thinking Basketball. It's really one of my favorite channels, but really like, why do we do this? Why is this herd mentality, like this notion of like everything's the best or everything's the worst? Okay, let's keep talking about this. The second thing that's hurting the Pistons is no one's taking them lightly. Why is no one taking them lightly? Well, initially no one was taking them lightly because Cade is a pretty big name. He's a pretty big name. He carries a lot of cachet. He's not Kyle Kuzma is what I'm saying. He's not much better as a player than Kyle Kuzma either, though. That's the problem. See, Cade is overrated. Cade came into the season massively overrated. I was trying to tell you last year, year before that he's overrated. That doesn't mean he's terrible. It doesn't mean he's not a starter. It doesn't mean he's not a very good player. I'm just trying to tell you, if your expectation is that he's one of the 5 best young players in the NBA, you're wrong. You've been wrong. And if he thinks that, he's wrong. And if Pistons fans think that, they're wrong. And if Raptor fans think that, they're wrong. He's not that good. But he's not this bad. Nuance. It's somewhere in the middle. The truth is always somewhere in the middle. I'm trying to point to the middle. He's not this bad. He's not that good. The problem is he is a former first overall pick. He is a guy who carries a lot of cachet. There are a lot of guys on other teams who were passed up for guys that are currently on this team. This is the constant crux of assembling a team of high lottery picks is you have guys with a lot of name recognition. Okay. Is Isaiah Stewart a much better player than James Wiseman? Hell yes, he is. He is a much better player. But the average NBA fan or the average NBA player has spent a great deal more time hearing about, talking about, thinking about James Wiseman than Isaiah Stewart. James Wiseman's a big name. Marvin Bagley's a big name. These are big names. These are guys who are talked about. I don't think people understand the draft cycle. We heard about these guys in high school. We heard about early, like late grade school. These are big names. Like Andrew Wiggins is a big name. He never lived up to Maple Jordan, all that hype, but he's still a big name. Zion He's playing like shit right now, but he's a big name. You see Zion Williamson next game. You don't think, okay, Zion Williamson's barely making up the court. Zion Williams doesn't rotate right now. Zion Williams doesn't have a post game that he can remember right now. You're not thinking Zion is probably at best the third or fourth best player on the Pelicans right now on an average night. I'm not talking about the best night. I'm not talking about a big explosion. I'm talking about on an average night. You're not thinking about that. You're thinking Zion, the shoe contract, Zion, max contract, Zion, all the hype. Yo, every one of these players were ranked above hundreds of players. Those hundreds of players right now are playing for other teams. And those hundreds of players are currently better than these players. Scotty Barnes is better than Cade Cunningham. Alperen Sengun is better than Cade Cunningham. Jalen Suggs right now is playing better than Cade Cunningham. Franz is playing better than Cade Cunningham. Evan Mobley. There's a lot of players who were passed up for this guy, and they're looking at him, and he's the one who got what they wanted. Everyone wanted to be the first overall pick. Everyone wants the money. Everyone wanted to be the second overall pick or the first overall pick in Marvin Bagley's draft. But he got pick number 2. These guys don't forget. You've got names that don't have a game to back up the name. They have contracts and endorsement deals that don't back that up. This is a giant FU from the entire league to this team. Think about it. When you see the Pistons, why do you think this is such news? Why do you think this is such news? It's news because you expected more. It's news because these are names that you can actually associate with. It's news because almost every one of these guys, I saw draft pundits come out and, I know, and Cade Cunningham, he's going to be the next Luka Doncic. We heard it. These people kept saying it. Last year, oh, if only Cade was healthy, this team would be in the play-in, but, he's not healthy. I heard it. Even this year, oh, if Bojan Bogdanovic, if Cade just had some spacing, you're still overrating this guy. I mean, but now, of course, 27, 28 losses later, now you're underrating him. But the truth is, these are names. These are names that everyone recognizes. Like nobody gets up to play Malachi Flynn or Malachi Brenham. No Malachi is ever scaring anybody in the NBA right now. None. But LaMelo Ball, that's a target. That's a target. That's a name. Julius Randle, that's a name. Luka, that's a name. You gotta understand it from this perspective. This is a psychological thing. No team wants to be the team that loses to this team. Now, Cade comes out and says, "There's no way we're 26 losses in a row bad." And now it's national. Everyone's reading about it. Everyone's talking about it. This is a Raptors podcast. We're doing a Pistons video. I'm part of the problem. I'm creating content about the Pistons. Everyone's creating content about the Pistons. Everyone's talking about the Pistons. Everyone has an opinion about the Pistons. But the truth is, when you're this big, every game becomes like a playoff game. Now, congratulations to the Pistons the last couple of games. Their effort has been on par with a team that's really fighting. Yesterday, you saw Jalen Duren just fighting for those rebounds. But at the end of the day, if the other team doesn't sleep on you, I think the Celtics played horribly last night, by the way, just to clarify that. They came out, they totally expected this team they showed their immaturity last night, for sure. The Pistons were not good enough to be 21 up on the Celtics. The Celtics allowed that to happen. They thought they could sleepwalk into it. They thought it was an easy night, and they almost lost. And they should have lost. The Celtics should have lost last night, and they didn't. So you got a lot of names people recognize, and they get up for it. Now you got a team that everyone's talking about, and everyone's getting up for it. I don't think I can remember the last time Raptors Nation talked about a game against a team as much as they have talked about this, December 30th matchup against the Pistons. No, not against Kawhi coming back, not against, maybe the last time it was Vince Carter coming back with the Nets for the first time. Maybe that's the last time I remember, that game, circle that game. Kyle Kuzma is trolling, but he is not wrong. Nobody wants to lose to the Pistons right now, which is only exacerbating their problems. Because the truth is, I mean, even as much as no one wanted to lose the process era Sixers because they were so bad and everyone knew they were so bad and they made so many headlines for being so bad. There are teams out there that are bad and no one talks about them. They're just bad. You don't think about them. You're just like, oh, that team still exists. That's nice. Emeka Okafor on the Charlotte Bobcats. That happened. It existed. Adam Morrison, those teams, they happened. They pedaled out 15 wins, 18 wins. It didn't become headline news until I think they finished with 6 or 7 wins that one year. That was horrible, right? You go out. How much were people talking about the Rockets last year? Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. and everyone struggling in there. And no one talked about them, but barely. Steven Silas, who's currently, weirdly enough, on the Pistons bench now. All of these guys, no one talks about 20 loss teams. We only talk about it when it's extreme or when it's happening to someone that it's not supposed to happen to. And right now, it's extreme and it's happening to people that this is not supposed to happen to. Okay? You also have Monty. Let's not ignore the elephant in the room here. Monty Williams got paid a lot of money to coach this team. He's the highest paid coach in the NBA. He's coaching against men who would have killed to have his contract and probably think that they can outcoach him. He's not that great a coach. He's a good person from what I've heard. He's not that great a coach. They massively overpaid to get him. That puts a target on their back too. So you have a whole bunch of guys who are high lottery picks that haven't proved to be worth it. And you have a coach who isn't worth his contract. And you got a league full of men who are extremely competitive, who want to put this team in its place and prove a point. Is it bullying? Is it mean? No, it's fair game. It's competition. But context matters so much here. Sorry, I'm not looking at the comments. I'm not trying to get distracted on this rant. Got 129 comments. If there's a super chat or something, I apologize. I will definitely check it out in a little bit. So that's the second reason. They're targeted. Okay. Now the third reason. The third reason is one we've already alluded to. This roster. But it's not for a lack of talent. James Wiseman is very talented. Okay. Marvin Bagley is a very talented player. He's not a good player. He's a talented player. Killian Hayes has a ton of talent. Bogdanovich is a rotation player for every team in the NBA. Cade is a rotation player for every single team in the NBA. Jalen Duren is a rotation player for every single team in the NBA. Isaiah Stewart will be a rotation player for half the teams in the NBA. There's a lot of talent on this team. There is. You may not want to believe it, but there just is. There is. Sorry to say, there is. There's Marcus Morris. I think he hasn't played this year. He's talented. It's the wrong type of talent. It's the wrong fit of talent. It's redundant talent. It's poor roster construction, for sure. There are basketball reasons, of course. The Pistons are not just losing because of a giant conspiracy in the league wanting to prove a message and pick on the Pistons. It's not that. It's not that. The Pistons are one of the marquee franchises in the NBA. That might be hard for some people to believe, but there aren't a lot of franchises in the NBA that have even won 2 championships. This team has won 3. Right? They've been to 6 conference finals. I mean, everyone grew up with the Pistons being a good team. Most people who are adults today grew up with the Pistons being a good team. I think that matters too. I think that matters. You don't think people feel a certain way going into, like the Lakers arena, even when the Lakers were bad? You don't think that was a game that people got up for because everyone associates the Lakers being good? You don't think one of the reasons the Knicks struggled so much prior to this Jalen Brunson era? Because everyone goes into New York and it's a game. It's a marquee game. Regardless of what roster they're fielding out, it's still a marquee game. It doesn't matter if that team has won 12 games. It's still a marquee game. Some teams just evoke a response in guys. They're human. These are all human beings. 450 players in the league, all human, last I checked. The Lakers is always a big game. Always. Celtics, always a big game. Knicks, always a big game. Miami, always a big game. So what team is really capable of catching someone sleeping? Maybe the Portland Trailblazers, Charlotte Hornets, Washington Wizards. And these teams haven't been really good in my lifetime. I apologize, Blazers Nation. Yes, y'all were really, really good in my lifetime, early 2000s, late 90s. But my point is, it is also the roster. It's the type of roster. Now, what is actually wrong with this roster? Well, Problem number one, you don't have a top 70 player. And you're one of a few teams that don't have a top 70 player. Actually, you're one of two teams that don't have a top 70 player. The Wizards are the other team that doesn't have a top 70 player. I don't think Kyle Kuzma is a top 70 player. I think he's fringy. I don't think Cade's top 70 player, and I don't think it's that fringy. I would argue the best player on the Pistons right now is Jalen Duren. And I don't even think that's that controversial to take. So you're missing that top flight talent. And I think that matters. Not in terms of talent. Of course, Cade is one of the 70 most talented players in the league right now. He's just not that impactful because he's young. He's missed time. Everyone wants to compare him to his draft class, and that's fair, of course. But those guys have played more. A lot of those guys have played more. Alperen Sengun has played 3 straight years. Scotty's played 3 years in the league. Cade has barely played. He got injured in his rookie season. He got injured last year. Okay, there's a lot of growing pains that are going to happen. He's been asked to carry a lot. Yeah, he has really high turnovers. That's a big problem. His analytics profile is abysmal. It is 40th percentile in just about every single thing. I understand people who have started out super high on Cade, like he's going to be a franchise player, he's going to be an all-star, 10-time all-star, whatever. That cooled on him a little bit after year one, like maybe 5-time all-star, and now are just straight up, he's never going to make an all-star team, he's terrible. It's not that dire. He's still a good player. A good young player. He's good for 22. He's really good for 22. He's just not good enough right now to be the best player on a team that should win ever. So he's being over leveraged. He's over carrying. And there isn't a lot around him. But to those of you who say, oh man, we got to get Cade out of Detroit. This guy is suffering. It's not his fault. He's doing everything. Chill on that. Because the way you talk about it, you're talking about like prime Michael Jordan being surrounded by bums. This is not the case. He is absolutely part of the problem. So stop excusing that he's part of the problem. He's absolutely a part of the problem. So is Asar Thompson, who I love. Love Asar Thompson. Love Jaden Ivey. Love Jalen Duren. Love these young players. I like Isaiah Stewart a lot. You know who I don't like on this team, though? James Wiseman. Killian Hayes. Marvin Bagley. Yo, how can you have 3 of the biggest busts in draft history on the same team and not expect that to impact your locker room? The reason I'm doing this video is because I was having a conversation with my girlfriend this morning, and I was telling her about the 28-loss Pistons. And we were actually watching a Commissioner Dynamo video a couple of days ago, and she got super into the Pistons because he made such a beautiful case for why this story matters, and now she's invested. We watched the Pistons game together yesterday against Boston. We were both rooting for the Pistons to end their streak, partially because I don't want them to end the streak against the Raptors, selfishly. But really, we're invested in this. And I started telling her my theory on why the Pistons are bad. And it's the part of this video that I haven't done yet. And she said, you need to make a video about this. Is anyone talking about this? You need to make a video about this. And I was like, you know what? I will. And so 3 hours later, I have. You don't lose 28 games in a row by accident. I don't even think it's possible in NBA 2K. Sometimes you just stumble into a win. You just catch a team and you get a hot shooting streak. This is psychological at this point. And I'm not even saying psychological in the quack doctor sort of sense of like, lay down on the couch and, tell me your problems kind of way. I mean psychological as in they're crumbling on the insides from the team dynamic perspective, from an organizational perspective. And I think it's happening for a multitude of reasons, but mainly it's because they have losing habits. They have a lot of players that have losing habits. When James Wiseman left the Golden State Warriors, they got better immediately. It was like immediate. If he didn't play, they were better. When he sat, they were better. He's a net negative player. And I don't even know if it matters at all if he's playing for you. He's just a net negative. I don't know James Wiseman. I've never talked to him. But I feel him. I feel his presence on the court. Killian Hayes. It's heavy, man. Marvin Bagley. When Marvin Bagley left the Sacramento Kings, Their fortunes turned shortly thereafter. Some people have losing habits. If you are a 36-year-old who is currently, $30,000 in debt, and it's not medical debt, and you got terrible credit, and you're not happy with your job, and you're not happy with your relationships, you're the problem. You are the problem. You are at least a large part of the problem. And if you are a player or a coach or an executive on a team that has lost 28 straight, you are at least part of the problem. At least part. It's not possible to be this bad for this long, this consistently, without there being issues within your locker room. Now, some people have winning habits, some people have losing habits, and I'll tell you what the difference is. Everyone overspends once in a while, right? Everyone has a drink when they're not supposed to, or breaks a habit that they're not supposed to, breaks their gym routine when they don't want to, gets a little bit toxic, loses their temper. Everyone goes out of bounds once in a while. Every team loses games. Every team gets blown out once in a while. Every team loses a game they're not supposed to lose. Those losses don't matter. What matters is how you respond. And I don't think the Pistons have responded very well. There's been a lot of pathetic efforts throughout this 28-game losing streak. Luckily for Pistons fans right now, they've gotten quite desperate, and they're not putting out a pathetic effort but at this point, but they're still losing. But had they played as hard as they did against the Boston Celtics last night, this team might have 12 wins right now instead of 2. That's the gap. They haven't played consistently hard. People talk about a mutiny forming against Monty Williams. Who told you to hire a man who did not want to coach this year, whose wife is going through breast cancer? Who told you to hire that dude? Oh, you think you could just throw money at people and change their entire life, huh? This is the problem with people who think money solves every problem. It doesn't solve cancer, bro. In his mind, I'm not saying that Monty Williams is not into this, but it's guaranteed money. You fire him, you pay him. He has nothing to lose at this point. And he might be well-intentioned. He might mean every word he said. I feel for these guys. But you know what I heard? I heard a person talking about his team like they're not his team. I feel for them. They're going out there. No, you're going out there. You're a part of this. We are going out there. I feel for us. But there's a thing about language. People always tell you the truth, even when they don't want to. He laughed. Go back and listen to it. He laughed. Hold on. Let me show it to you.
I hurt for them.
I hurt for them. He touches his head nervously. Laughter can be a release of tension, sure. I'm not saying he's laughing at the Pistons, but the touching of the head doesn't help. People always come in front of the camera and they say all the right things from their mouth and their head, but their heart says something else. Their body is giving you different, because lying is uncomfortable. Lying is very uncomfortable. We often dodge our eye contact when we're lying about things. We touch our face. We try to put something between us when we lie. The podium helps. Why does every liar have a podium? Every politician has a podium. People lie all the time. And if you ask him with a gun to his head, is your heart completely in this? No, I don't think it is. And so if the players have decided to quit on him, I don't blame them. He's not a bad coach. He's just not the right coach at the right time. You got him 4 years late or 3 years early, but you can't just force someone to do something they don't want to do, and just throw money at them and be like, okay, that solves the problem. You didn't want to coach this year, but here's life-changing money. And he's human, But the heart wants what it wants. Losing habits are like when you lose 3 or 4, 5, 6, and everyone starts tweeting at you and they start talking about like how you're a terrible team and how you're on this trash ass team and your roster's trash. Look, man, I have experience. I was a Raptor fan last year. I know what a toxic work environment looks like. I know what a toxic team looks like. I know what selfish basketball looks like. I know what 5 guys going out there as individuals trying to make sure that everyone sees that it's not their fault looks like. I know what bad communication on the basketball court looks like. I know what lazy transition defense and the type of dog shit defense the Pistons have played for most of this year. I know what that looks like. And I know what a team that's disconnected and full of individuals looks like. This team lacks leadership. It lacks leadership. It's too young. It's a very young team. And whoever you have trying to lead this team isn't doing a very good job. The Pistons are not this bad. Cade Cunningham is right. They are not this bad, but they are this bad. They're just not as bad as people think they are. But they are very much their record right now. Will it change? Maybe. But I think that when you think about like what would Scotty Barnes do, you know, if the Raptors lost 4 or 5 straight, I wonder. I would hope. Here's what I would hope he would do. I hope he would talk a lot. I hope he'd start getting on guys. I hope he'd start talking to guys who maybe aren't feeling confident and trying to inspire them, give them some confidence, give them a boost, take some ownership. I mentioned a few lives ago that I lived in government housing when I was younger, and I always noticed the dilapidated nature of everything. The paint chipping, the walls are cracked, there's holes everywhere, there's pee in the elevator, pee in the stairwell, drug needles everywhere. Nobody took ownership of that thing. There was no community cleanup. Nobody cared because everyone was just passing through. See, the problem with being bad is someone has to own it. Monty Williams has to own the fact that he is coaching a team this bad. Cade Cunningham has to own the fact that he is the best player on the worst team in the NBA right now by the record. They have to own it. Killian Hayes has to own the fact that he was given every opportunity and he has failed. He has to own it. You can't run away from it. Marvin Bagley, all of these guys, they have to own it. But if you have a rational voice in the locker room right now and it's, 18 guys down or 14 guys down, or it's an assistant coach, that's not going to help much. You need winners. Masai Ujiri, Toronto Raptors president, always talks about winning culture, winning ideas, winning habits. Winning is important because winning is a habit. Habitually, winners win. Why? Why does Michael Jordan win? Why does he win? Why does he win in basketball? Because winning is a standard, winning is a habit, winning. And it comes down to your focus and attention when you lose. What happens? Do you dial up? Do you let 16-game losing streaks happen? No, because you would break chairs and bust your locker room and punch someone before you got to 5 games. And everyone knows it. Everyone knows it won't be tolerated. Everyone knows that's not who we are. And that changes the collective identity and the spirit of the team. It changes the standard of the team. If you have a team with a leader who demands that you defend, everyone falls in line. But if your leader is a lazy defender, your team will never be a good defensive team. Take a note from every great defensive team in the league. Chief among them, the Detroit Pistons, 2004. Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace. Look at those guys, man. They held themselves so accountable defensively. If they messed up a rotation, first person to put up their hand, Rasheed Wallace. My bad. I got that. That breeds accountability. That breeds trust. Chauncey Billups. If he misses a pass, he's letting Rip know, my bad. This is accountability. Winning starts with accountability. It starts with standards and communication. That's what's lacking in the Pistons right now. You know what? I'm not on the Pistons plane. I can't pretend to know what's happening on that plane, but I have a feeling. Let me take a guess. Guys are on the phone with their agents saying, yo, get me out of this situation. These dudes are bums. But you know what? It's 17 dudes having the same conversation with their agent. These dudes are all bums, not realizing you're a bum too. You're part of this. The Detroit Pistons are the government housing they're the projects that I grew up in. They are the dilapidated walls, and the pee-stained corridors that made me so embarrassed to invite my friends over. Someone has to take ownership. Someone has to organize a community cleanup. That's really the reality of the situation. Now, here's what I would do if I was the Pistons. I'm going to give you the final, thing. I promised this wasn't going to be super long. The Raptors do play tonight against the Celtics. I'm very excited. But I do want to get to some questions and some comments. There's 200 plus comments here. But here's what I would do. Number one, I would have a very honest conversation about Cade Cunningham about coming off the ball. I do think that he holds the ball a little bit too much. I don't think he's dynamic enough as a passer. I think the turnovers are telling you the truth. He is just loose with the basketball. He does not process the game at a high enough pace right now. His turnover percentage has come down a lot. It was like close to 18% earlier. It's come down to 16%. That's still very, very bad. Okay. So I understand the concept of reps. I would explore the idea of getting a traditional point guard in there. Now, what is a traditional point guard? Is it Jaden Ivey? Maybe. Maybe it's Jaden Ivey. He's not much better on the turnover side. But I would explore the idea of him being less of a Luka type and maybe more of a Latrell Sprewell type. I know he's not the athlete Latrell was, but like a guy who can create, but more like secondary actions, Latrell is a terrible example for this. Who's a better example? Chris Middleton? Hey, he's not the defender Chris Middleton is, but he has potential, man. Cade's not a bum. Cade's a decent player. You need to work on it with his shooting. That's my Cade solution. Okay, Jaden Ivey, definitely I would start him. James Wiseman, I would consider cutting him. To be honest, if I could trade him and Marvin Bagley to one team that is desperate for some potential, I laugh when I say potential with those two. I would trade them so fast. I would cut Isaiah Livers. I would cut those three like tomorrow. I'd cut them today. Like those three gone. Kevin Knox gone. That's 4 guys. That's 4 roster spots that just opened up. Congratulations. Joy to the world. Killian Hayes, probably also gone. Like he might stay. He might be like the one that I like the best among those guys. I know that he's a whipping boy in Detroit right now, but I might keep him. So 5 or 6 roster spots will open up immediately. Then I would really, really start exploring out of the box ideas, like players in Europe that are maybe showing me that they know the right way to play basketball, that they're two-way guys and they're under 30. I would consider bringing a lot of those guys over. Guys like Bruno Caboclo, currently playing in Serbia. I think he could help him a lot. He's a stretch big. He plays two-way. He's got massively long arms. He certainly would have had a hell of a lot better time trying to guard Kristaps Porzingis last night if you had him on the court. Okay, you are wasting roster spots right now on guys who have no chance. Okay, no chance. When I think of where prospects go to die, it's Detroit right now. Okay, and if you don't want Cade around this much losing, if you still believe at 22 that he has maybe the potential to become some version of what you thought he could be, maybe he won't become Luka light. I apologize. I just, this is just turned on right there. I got a ghost in my room. I don't know what's up with that. You got like, maybe he won't become that. Maybe he won't become Luka light. Maybe he won't become the primary initiator that you wanted him to, but at least he could become like a 2-3 time All-Star. I still see that for Cade. I mean, I'm not suggesting it's definitely going to happen, but I'm saying like it could happen for him. Like he could be like a decent player. So I want to surround him with players that don't have such losing habits because he didn't come from losing. Montverde never, like barely ever lost a game. He didn't come from losing. So now he's having to identify as a loser year after year after year. He is the face of losing. That wears on a person who's 20, 21, 22 years old. It can really wear on a person's psyche. Okay? So you need to get some winners around this guy pronto. Guys who maybe even are over the hill. Maybe I take 3 roster spots and give it to some very, very talented G Leaguers who have, like high motor, good winning habits, like that. Like a Jeff Doughton. I would love Jeff Doughton on Detroit. That could be your table setting backup point guard. Someone like that. He's a good guy to have in the locker room. He stabilizes the room. Someone like that. Okay. So that's the first thing I would do. Is sort of the second thing I would do is maybe bring in a couple of veteran mentors. Someone like a Thaddeus Young. I'm not suggesting Thaddeus Young and, guys of this ilk, but someone of that sort, maybe, your Udonis Haslem types. Like, you need some sort of accountability and a grown-up in the room who can sort of really rally the troops and keep people balanced, Like, when Grady Dick, let's not talk about the Raptors. If Killian Hayes starts hanging his head after a couple of misses and he comes to the huddle and he's dejected at the end of the bench, I don't want him talking to James Wiseman. There's nothing James Wiseman can tell him about that experience that I want him hearing in that moment. Okay? You cannot keep planting seeds, fresh seeds, in tainted soil and expecting them to blossom. You just can't. So you need to change the culture. Okay, so that's what I would do roster-wise. Okay, maybe you don't have I would probably trade Bogdanovich for something. Maybe there's a contender out there who could use him, take some contracts back, take a pick back, maybe take a younger player back who fits a little bit better, get some guard help. Okay, Jalen Duren, 100% a starting center. I don't understand why James Wiseman is starting over him, but you know what? You make too many decisions like this as an organization. Like, players lose trust in what you're thinking, because nobody in the world should have ever questioned whether Jalen Duren was a better player than James Wiseman last year. It's insane. And can you imagine if I'm saying this as a passing guy who maybe watched 7 Pistons games last year, maybe 10 Pistons games last year and 10 this year? If I'm saying this, can you imagine what James Wiseman is like, or what Jalen Duren is saying to his trainer, to his agent? This team is insane. What are they doing? This dude can't catch a basketball. So that's what I would do. Number one. So Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, Asar Thompson. That's my future. Now, everything else, Isaiah Stewart too. I like his shooting. I like his toughness. He's not a great player, but if that guy's playing 15 minutes off your bench, you're not bad because of it. Definitely not. He's probably not a starting player, but he's a contributor. He's a guy who can win. I think he can win. I would like to have him on my team. I like him. Okay. Next thing. Troy Weaver, get to walking. Arm, tell him, get to walking. You guys are done. You have had this. You could have made this change 3 years ago. You chose not to. You continue to, employ Dwayne Casey. Now he did such a fantastic job with all your development with Killian Hayes and Cade Cunningham that you promoted him. Everyone's looking around at this like, this organization actually is crazy. No, whoever is in charge of that decision needs to go. And Troy Weaver, you need to go like 4 years ago. You should have been gone a long time before you made this mess. You were totally unqualified to do this. Tom Gores, you need help. You need some serious help. If you think that Troy Weaver is a permanent fixture, you gave him an extension, God knows why, you need help too. You need better people in your ear, because the people who are advising you are wrong. Troy Weaver needs to go. Okay? You need to bring in some talent. You may not get Bob Myers unless you throw another, but you need young talent. You need someone who really understands roster construction. You need someone who really understands analytics and the modern NBA. You need someone forward-thinking. Get someone forward-thinking in that front office. Someone like Bobby Webster. Not necessarily our Bobby Webster, but someone like that. Get someone in who has some bright ideas. Bobby Webster not doing a great job with the Toronto Raptors right now, notwithstanding, but someone cut from that cloth. Okay? Not an old school head who's just a nice guy who's going to try to tell you, what you want to hear. No, someone who can push you, someone who can question, someone who can question whether Cade is good enough to be the marquee franchise guy or whether you guys are just lying to yourself. Because that's a question worth having, by the way. If Cade's your best player, how good are you is a really good question to entertain at some point, and probably should have been entertained 3 years ago, because he's been proving it for 3 straight years. He's not franchise level changer right now. Nothing I've seen from him at the NBA level, regardless of however many times he scores 41 points, 43 points, I don't care. His processing of the game is not franchise level. His talent skill is there, but his processing, his athleticism is not on that level. If he's your third best player long term, I think you're sitting pretty. But if you tried to build a contender around Jeremy Grant, oh wait, you did. Okay, you did try to build a team around Jeremy Grant. And also, by the way, getting nostalgic and like trying to bring back Jeremy Grant is not the answer either. Okay. Let's not go there. So that's two things I would do for sure right away. The third thing is I would probably reconstruct my coaching staff. I may not fire Monty Williams because certainly, he's on the hook for a lot of money. I would have an honest conversation with him about maybe, negotiating a buyout if he's not into this, because obviously we cannot. But I wonder what that introductory conversation with him was like even anyways. Did they not know? I mean, they tried to lure Ime Udoka. They tried to lure everybody. Why didn't you go give Jordi Fernandez $2 million a year to coach for the next 3 years? If he'll take that job, give it to him. Give it to him. He is incredible. Canada basketball coach, assistant coach for the Sacramento Kings. He's incredible. All of these, there are so many people in this world that require an opportunity, and you are just taking up NBA roster spots with James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley. These guys should be out of the league right now. I mean, borderline out of the league. I mean, I'm not saying talent-wise they're not good enough to be one of the top 450 players, but man, barely. But if you have so many of these guys in your locker room, Kevin Knox, James Wiseman, Marvin Bagley, Killian Hayes, you have so many of these guys who are just high lottery flameouts. They're just, you're building a group home. What are you doing? Of abandoned children. Like, what are you doing? Like, these guys need guidance. They can't guide themselves. They all got themselves in the same position. I have a feeling that this team's entire draft strategy is to look at who the best player is at age 16 and then basically make an 8-year plan to get that player on their team somehow. Maybe y'all should just stop watching AAU. Just stop watching youth basketball altogether and just stop. Just study the numbers. Don't watch youth basketball. I don't know. Anyways, let's get some comments before we hit the 2-hour mark. Your goat saying I like Kevin Knox, but is he really good enough? I don't think so. Okay. Cool, man. Absolutely. Like up the live. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Okay. You got to give it to Monty Williams. It's not possible to do any worse of a job. How do you know what job he's doing? I'm not even suggesting that he's doing a great job. I'm not. Trust me, I'm not. But it's like Vegan Grass saying, how would Cade look playing next to Scotty? Pretty well. Pretty good, actually. I mean, he doesn't shoot very well right now. That's the concern with Cade, but he's a decent defender. Some people have suggested to me, some people were pretty smart, that he might be a really good sixth man someday. If that's his future, then that's his future. But I certainly see a future in a world in which he starts. Yesterday, I did the 2021 redraft. I picked him 5th, partially because I think I was trying to be kind to Pistons fans. In reality, I probably would have a hard time picking him any higher than 7th. I think I would pick Jalen Suggs and Trey Murphy III over him, all things equal. But he's certainly more talented, man. And he's got a lot of talent. People always point to the issues and whatever, but the gap between him and some of the players that are very, very much people are in favor of, is not that big. He's very creative. He's very shifty. He's a decent player. He's not a bad player at all. Absolutely. Kid J saying Ant not having a better season than Giannis, Jokic, or Embiid. He's not having a better season than those guys, plus like 10 other guys. But the Minnesota Timberwolves are good. They're really good. Andrew Eden saying Duran is a dog. Hell yes. Hell yes. They are. Anyways, the Toronto Raptors are an hour and a half away from facing the Boston Celtics. Allegedly, I heard that the Celtics are planning on resting / sitting a lot of guys. Great, let's win one. I'm going to tell you right now, and I've told you all week, I don't feel super confident about the Raptors facing off against the Pistons, a desperate Pistons team that allegedly is trying not to become the worst team in NBA history tomorrow. Yeah, I just one of the things that prompted this was this. No one should derive pleasure from this. No one. Have empathy, man. It could happen to anyone. Peace. Like the video, subscribe.